Yes, we talked about he went and he tagged New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. On the levee, he did an image of a boy who is, his umbrella is flying away. He did another where instead of a kite, it's a refrigerator that he's holding on that's being blown away. He did an image of what looks like American soldiers doing the vandalism instead of the those that were vandalizing New Orleans after the hurricane. He also did an image of an African-American maid who looks as though she is pulling up the image, the edge of the building and exposing the bricks underneath and just sweeping everything under the rug or under the building, sweeping under the controversy, all the problems, in that way disguising them. So yes, we did see that.
The Abraham Lincoln.
The Abraham Lincoln, yes. If you get off on Canal Street exit heading into downtown New Orleans, when you come off the ramp and just before you get onto the main street that connects to Canal Street, if you look to your left, there's an image of Abraham Lincoln pushing a homeless cart. So you can make your own inferences about slavery and Abraham Lincoln's connection to that, and African-American poverty and homelessness and so forth and so on in regards to that image. So people take Banksy tours. They go all over the world and see these sorts of things that he has done everywhere.
Have you seen the movie? The documentary?
Exit Through the Gift Shop. It was very hard for me to get through that.
Right.
It's a documentary that another artist had started, and Banksy ends up taking it over and filming this artist as he's trying to make his way into the art world. And you just really want to kill the guy by the end of it. He's just this obnoxious, annoying, gonna make some money, gotta do something kind of guy. And I don't know if you had the same impression.
Well, did you have any ideas of that theory? That was another Banksy piece of art, the entire thing?
I don't think it was intentional. I can see where it would be something that Banksy would be interested in terms of his play on forgeries and mockeries. Banksy also created a number of British pounds with, instead of the Queen on there, there was Princess Di. And the forgeries were so real that he could crumple them up and take them places and people would take it as real currency. So when you think about his interest in those sorts of forgeries and mockeries and plays, I can very easily see him getting involved in this and all of a sudden wanting to go, I think I can make a statement about the art world if I take this over subtly. And I think that's probably what he did, because it very quickly became, instead of a search for Banksy, it became about that guy, how he viewed Banksy and wanted to emulate Banksy, and did a very poor job of it.
Steve, I was going to talk about this image, but I think you're probably more qualified. Particularly, not just modern art, but classical art is often criticized or, after the fact. And I found this cartoon that I thought you'd appreciate when you deal with classic, If you want to walk people through what this cartoonist is trying to say, art, this is censorship of art.
When was this made?
This was 97.
97.
Yeah.
So long ago.
Yeah, really, 97, 10 years, 11, 12. The thinker, obviously the reference here, this work of art, the man leaned over in deep thought, resting on his chin on his hand. Naked, of course, which, I don't know how many of you lounge around thinking deep thoughts. But in this case, obviously the offending portion covered being the man's head as opposed to his genitalia. Anybody want to throw out a guess as to why the head would be covered in this particular instance?
The world's not worried about what you're thinking, but they're worried about how you look.
There could be issues of body image involved. There could also be issues of, intellectualism going on here, not wanting you to think about current events, getting involved in current political systems, religious systems, all sorts of various social systems. But the offense essentially comes in terms of put a bag over your head and ignore what's going on in the world outside. You live in your own little world, and whatever happens out there, if it doesn't affect you directly, it's not part of your concern. And most of us live in our own little bubble and don't choose to acknowledge what is going on in a broader spectrum. So I think even though this was made in 1997, it's probably just as relevant today in regards to the information that we're fed via the internet and magazines and newspapers and so forth and so on. And we're always just given the same information over and over and over again, and hardly asked to give any sort of critical thought to a lot of the issues that we're being faced with in terms of sustainability, politics, environment, and so forth and so on. But correct me if I'm wrong or expand on it.
No, I was going to talk, but no, since you're dealing with art, because classical art too, things that we consider to be almost sacrosanct, when you think of a Da Vinci, or even a Rodin, or Michelangelo's David, or the images in the Sistine Chapel, people actually get offended by now, because you have, again, going back to, is Ophelia the artist? These bodies, that are associated with religious figures, but people are very uncomfortable with the fact they're actual mortal, physical beings, or being depicted as such. So even classical art we consider to be safe throughout history has been
criticized as being offensive in some way, shape, or form. Going back to the first one, Piss Christ, another possible inference in terms of that one was referencing the fact that, or the idea that Jesus Christ was a living, breathing human being and actually had to take a piss at some point in his life. The idea that, also on the cross when Jesus would have died, spilling bowel and bladder once the body dies, so references to the humanity of Jesus Christ, as well as the divinity, of course, which the crucifix is a reference to, which I'm guessing probably one or two of you perhaps have on, one at least that I can see. But I always find it ironic that such a rather horrific image is one that is so prevalent in our society, this person nailed to a cross, dying, and I understand the sacredness of it, dying for one's sins, but you got to admit it's still a horrific image, and yet it's one of the most prevalent ones that you can go to any store, any street, and people are wearing this rather horrific image, but they get offended if it's tweaked or twinged in any kind of way.
Did you say, I forgot to say, that when you created Piss Christ, was that to be offensive? Like, did you,
no.
Or was it just...
No. He, even though he chooses to work in substances that generally offend people because we don't want to think about things like breast milk and blood, menstrual blood, semen, urine, so forth and so on, a lot of his work is an attempt to, like you were saying, reference the bodily quality of these holy figures and relics. So he photographs corpses in various states of decay, he photographs piles of manure and other such things. So in many ways he's very much about the things that we try to discard, but recognize the fact that they are a part of our life.
It's purpose because to question the substance, whether it's
whether it's
actual offensive substance.
Exactly.
So if he immersed it in some water with food coloring in it, it wouldn't have had the same effect.
Yeah. And I think one of the, after this April 17th incident, one of the museum curators raised the question to the people who had vandalized it, would you have been offended if it had been a Quran submerged in urine? What if we had taken, Ganesh or Shiva Natharaj and submerged her in urine? Where would your offense have been then? You're only concerned with your religion and your icons and the offense in that respect. Well, where comes the freedom of religion and other people's expressions, and are you going to be equally offended if somebody else's religion is treated in the same way? So yeah, material, a lot to do with it. Okay. Cool.